Okay, we are going to add on to our student class now. And the directions say to add on 2 attributes, one for grade, one for age. When it says grade, I mean like your grade level. Now, there's actually 2 ways you could set it up. You could say your grade level's like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and so you'd make it a string variable. When I read that, I was thinking of like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. 9, 10, 11, 12, so it would be an int. And frankly, it's not clear, and I'll let you decide. The age, of course, would be an int. Now, is about that, how do you decide whether it should be an int or a double? It kind of depends. I mean, we've done some things here where, like the number of quarts, I mean, could you have 5.3 quarts? Of course you could. But we want to express it as a whole number. Likewise, age, kids especially say, well, I'm 9.5. It's important when you're young to say, I'm not just 9, I'm 9.5. We're not going to worry about that. The age will just be an int, whole numbers only. I just want you to understand that's a decision you make. So here I'm going to make 2 more instance variables. I'm going to make the grade level. And that's a good variable name. If you just put grade, that's okay. But grade, when you first hear it, makes you think of like a numeric grade, like you got a 95 on the test. So grade level, I think, is better. And then the age, once again, will be our other variable. Once again, make them all private. Now, so here's the deal. We're talking about having more than one constructor. Basically, every student object you create will have 5 attributes now. And the job of the constructor is to make the object and make sure it has all the data for all those. These int variables, they are set to 0 automatically. The string variables were set to null, actually. And technically, listen carefully. When someone called our student constructor and put the 3 names in there, Java created these variables first, and then after creating them, and they're just empty at that point, storing null, then it stored whatever names we wanted. That's what these did, once again. And let me stress again that these are the instance variable names that you can use throughout the whole class. Like down here, I didn't say print first, middle, last. I said print first name, middle name, last name, because those are the instance variables. And this code didn't change that. All it did was take the data that was given, like Weldon, Anthony, Jacek. Those strings were stored into these temporary variables. And then we copied from these temporary variables into the instance variables so that later on we can get, the data is there. Once again, as long as this student object exists, it's going to store a first name, middle name, last name in these variables, in these instance variables. Now, let's move on. Like I said, the job of the constructor, I said, is to give the object data. Now, or make sure it's storing the data you want it to store, maybe is a better way to say it. I need to make a constructor that has 5 parameters, one per instance variable. So I'm going to add an int parameter, int variable, called, I'm just going to call it grade, and another one called age, which I'm just going to call, I'll say new age. Like I said, you can create these parameters with exact same names as the instance variables up here. I'm just trying to avoid that right now. And if you want to make it shorter and just put A, that's not a big deal because we try to avoid really short parameter names, like especially single letters. But reading this, it would be clear what is going on, what it means. So, and then once again, all you put here is assignment statements. Age equals A. And then, so now when someone calls this constructor and gives it all 5 pieces of data, the names get stored in these parameters, the grade and age get stored in these parameters, but then we copy from the temporary parameters into the instance variables. And so once again, down here, if I want to have a print, my print and my string produce everything object stores now, I need to add to it. But when I do so, I'm not going to be using grade or last or any of these temporary variables. I'm going to use the instance variables. Now, as far as what the output should look like, it should make sense. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep the name the way I had it, but I'm going to go ahead and add some text. So I'm going to say, like grade level. And then concatenate with the variable name. Once again, grade level is the instance variable. Hold on. And then age. And of course, make sure you have spaces in there. And close parenthesis, semicolon. So there you go. Now, that would print everything to the screen. Let me actually go back to the main method and test this out. So here, I'm going to change it. I'm going to make the middle name just an abbreviation. It doesn't hurt anything. It's still a string. And then it's supposed to be grade level. Let's say this is the 10th grader. And then age, let's say 15. Okay. Now, by the way, I went ahead and changed this. So I'm calling this constructor I just made. I still have this constructor. So they're both possible. That's the two ways you can create a student right now. Is you give it the 3 names and that's all, and then you give it all 5 pieces of data. Just for the record, the grade level and age, they were set to 0 automatically. So that's what, if I made a student using my original constructor, it would give the names, but the grade level and age would be 0. So I'd want to, of course, go back and change those later. If I created it that way. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's reality. Of course, I'm calling the new one I just made, so it would make the object store all 5 things, all 3 names, and then the grade level, and then the age. Now, watch what happens when I run this. Hopefully I don't have any errors. And there you go. The print statement is what I was working on, and it printed, shows the new output. The name and the grade level and the age. I might have put a little more space in there to make that look better. The toString method, I haven't updated yet, so it just shows the name right now. So let me go back, and I am going to put just one more space right there. Now, notice if I just wanted to output all the data, I just made as many print statements as I wanted. With the toString method, you have to do some fancy things. So I kind of gave a hint here. I'm going to just walk you through it. So what we typically do, if we want to have more than one line of output, then we create a variable, a string variable. I call it output. You can call it whatever you want. And then instead of, you don't immediately return the output, you kind of build up the output. And so the first thing, I'm just going to concatenate what I already had, but I'm going to tack on a new line character at the end. And if you wanted to, you could put all of this in parentheses. It's unnecessary though. The plus equals won't do anything until everything on the right is put together. And so concatenate all this, Frank L. Baum and the new line character into one string, and then tack that onto your output. And so it's just building up a string. Now I wanted to add this, and so I'm just going to copy and paste again. Output plus equals that text. And once again, instead of printing it, I'm just adding on my string. Should I have a new line character at the end? Here, let me go back to the main method. We typically put a call to toString method inside of a print line, so it's already going to have a new line at the end. I normally don't have a new line at the very end, but if you're going to have 4 lines of output, then you would want to format it like this, and everything but the last line would have the text for that line with a new line at the end, and you just keep doing plus equals every step of the way. Of course, when you're done, you have to return the answer, which the answer is output. Now this whole thing of returning, let me explain real quick. Whenever you call a method, you always, like, here, let me go back. So here we construct the object. When I call the print method from here, we're talking about the flow of execution now. So when I did this line of code and went into the student class, ran that constructor that I showed you, returned back here, now I call the print method. And it jumps in here and runs this line of code. And then it runs this line of code. When it's done, it returns back to the main method. And it's always doing that, jumping back and forth whenever you call a method. So now it's going to jump in here and jump to the toString method. So it's going to leave here and start running this code. It creates the variable called output, concatenates that line onto it, concatenates that onto it, and then it returns. But before, like up here in the print statement, there was no return statement in it because it was not necessary. When it was done, it just automatically returned. And because the return type was void, it just returned. Now though, it's going to return with an answer, and the answer has to be a string. And so it's going to come back here and return with that string and hand that string off to the print statement. And so that's how it actually gets printed. And give me a second. And there you go. They both work. Two different ways of doing it. Once again, the bottom one with the toString method is the typical way. Let me say again that we don't have to say student.toString. We just print the object, and Java will automatically call the toString method. By the way, one more kind of example of the difference between what we call a return method and a non-return method. Whenever you call a method, you're asking it to do something for you. So like if I asked a student to go to the office and just give them a message, for instance, when he's done, I expect him to come back, but I don't expect him to come back with something. And so that's an example of a void method. Whereas if I asked him to go to the office and get like a form for me, a paper for me, then that's what he should return with. And so that's the difference between a normal method and a return method. They both return back to wherever they were called from, but return method returns with a value. When whatever value it is, like here is a string, I can print it, I can store it, I can do whatever I want. But once again, the print method, you notice we just call it print. It's not inside of anything else. It's not storing. It just does something, and then we move on. All right, you guys have a good day.